They say he who speaks the last needs to speak the least. They're very capable speakers who just highlighted to you the need as to why we need to have a curriculum in place in respect to anti-corruption measures. The acting deputy commissioner has also highlighted that. I just wanted to make a couple of points. The reality of the matter is that we need to be able to address anti-corruption or take up the mantle of anti-corruption, not just through one particular avenue, but through many avenues. It includes, for example, the ability to prosecute, the ability to have the right laws in place, to be able to have the right resources in place to be able to identify the actual corrupt activity in the first place. Then, of course, we need to have a change in attitude in society. We need to be able to, for example, in the civil service, build in place various standard operating procedures, making sure that the law is up to date. Then, of course, you need to be able to ensure that that ideology is imbibed within society at large, within the private sector, and of course within the school curriculum itself. Because addressing corruption is not something that you can just do it within a day. In particular, if you have had a culture of corruption, if you've had it there for decades, and if you want to be able to tackle it, you need to be able to take a holistic approach. So by having a curriculum within the Ministry of Education syllabus, what will actually happen is that we will want to provide or have a generation of Fijians who will not only be able to identify and be able to alert others to it, as we know that school children in particular become some of the best ambassadors. When you have, for example, Clean Your Environment campaign, when you talk about climate change, when you talk about throwing litter out, I mean, the young people are the ones who actually were the first ones to actually say, hey, don't do that. I mean, I've got my son who goes to class 3. I mean, he talks to me about climate change because they're talking about climate change in the schools, so they become sensitized towards that. We have, young kids who tell their parents and grandparents not to throw the plastic bag out. So by having that curriculum in the schools, you'll be able to create that awareness, that sensitization, so they can alert others, their elders, not to do the wrong thing, to do the right thing. But of course, once they become adults themselves, if you're able to not just win over their hearts and minds, but indeed their souls, that corruption is actually a negative thing. Corruption is a wrong thing to do. To be able to have that natural instinct, as the acting Deputy Commissioner said, to be able to identify that, to be immediately sensitized to that. I can tell you numerous stories. As I was coming up this morning, just over here, coming up to level 9, I met somebody in the corridor downstairs in the lobby, and so he, said, I want X, Y, Z done on my particular island because you are related to us, and therefore you should give us priority. Now I had to explain to him that I can't do that, indeed even if I wanted to, but I should not want to do it in the first place. So I have to explain to him, no, you can't have that. You have to follow the particular process. And just because you are related to me does not mean you'll get priority over other people. It's a very basic thing such as that. And sometimes we fall prey to that. People come and say, no, Kai, we're from Kandavu, or Nanronga, or Tailevu, whatever it is, and people immediately fall for that. Or your old boy or old girl, or we went to the same school. We come from the same province. Or you worked together in a particular organization before. That level of sensitization must be there. And more importantly, which we are not very good at in Fiji, saying no. The ability to say no. The ability to be able to say, look, you have to follow the particular process. And I'm sorry, this cannot be done. Now, under the Baini Marama government, we took a very bold decision to ratify UNCAC, United Nations Convention Against Corruption. We put ourselves up for the peer review program. We created FICAC. Now today, this week, we have the United Kingdom and Samoa. They're here to review our compliance with UNCAC. Now, we've put ourselves up voluntarily for this, and it is a great thing. Fiji now actually goes and reviews other countries. So we must be able to have that administrative transparency, to be able to let other people to come in and review us, to be able to see how well we are doing, or where are the areas in which we are not doing well, and how we can improve that, to be able to have an open mind about it. Because the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, corruption is actually like cancer. It eats away at your society, eats away at your country. And you may not realize this. I mean, I had another gentleman saying to me just downstairs again, and maybe they all planned this because they knew I was going to come and speak here. He came up to me and said, I want to get this work permit for some investors from overseas. I said, you go through a normal channel. Yeah, but they've rejected it. But I know where you come from, so let's have a chat. I said, no, you're going to appeal it and you go follow the process. So that constantly in Fiji, you'll find people come and say this. A lot of civil servants will feel under pressure to do so. So you must be able to constantly stand up to it. By having the curriculum in place, we want to have an entire generation of people who can actually stand up and be able to deal with these matters. And that's very, very important. Somebody told me a story. I'll drop the country names, but this is a bit of a joke, but also it may be true too. So a minister from a particular country went visiting in another country, and the host country minister and the visiting country minister got along really well. And he said, why don't you come home for dinner? So the visiting minister goes up to the host country's minister's house, and he sees a BMW parked in the driveway and a very nice house. So the house is perched up on top of a hill overlooking the capital city, and the visiting minister says to him, look, after a few whiskeys, he says, look, I know that you don't have money in your family, and I know you people don't get paid that much salary. How did you come across this wealth? What made you, how are you able to afford this nice house and BMW and what have you? So the host country minister said, look, he said, you like my brother now, come to the balcony. So he took him to the balcony, and he said, you see that stadium out there? That's our national stadium. He said, yes. He said, well, I got 10% of that when it was built, the contract price. I said, okay. So that's how I got the money. And then he said, you must come and visit me, the visiting minister says. So a few months later, the former host, who's now the visiting minister, goes and visits the other minister. So he calls him home for dinner too. He drives up the driveway, sees a Rolls Royce parked, Picasso paintings in the house, and very wealthy. So they have the same conversation after a few whiskeys. And he says, how did you come across this wealth? He said, well, what's between brothers? Come, I'll take you to the balcony. So this particular city is built across a few islands. So he says, you see the bridge over there? He looks at me and said, what bridge? He said, exactly, I got 100% of the bridge. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you numerous stories as to how it used to happen actually in reality in many situations, many projects that did not get off the ground. But imagine the ordinary people who actually missed out on that particular opportunity. The taxpayers' funds, the donor funds that have been completely gone awash into the hands of one or two people. So we have to be very, very upright about it. We have to be very serious about it. We have to be able to address this. Countries like Singapore, for example, they started the corruption commissions back in the 60s. I remember visiting them before we were about to form FICAC, and immediately after that. And indeed, within their own organization, when the equivalent of their corruption commission was set up, people within their commission were actually charged. Ministers who were directly responsible with them were actually charged, or ministers who were in the government at that point in time were actually charged. So you need to be able to have the ability to look inwards. Critically important. You must always be self-critical to see how well you're doing. So the investigators in FICAC, the people who do the legal analysis in FICAC, the people who are carrying the public awareness, all of you actually have the huge responsibility to ensure that you yourself are completely speckless. There should not be a blemish on you. And more importantly, that will then instill and inspire the confidence. In the same way these two young men here were Sayed and Aiyaz. The ability to be able to give that wallet back. Today, if they had actually taken that $1,000, they would not be here today. Their names and photos would not appear in the national newspaper or the daily newspaper. Their parents would not get that kind of accolade. So I'm not saying that you should do things only because you're going to get something in return. But it's the innate satisfaction to be able to do that. The ability to stand up and say no, and the ability, more importantly, in the first place, to be able to recognize that something's wrong, something's amiss. So I'd like to thank, of course, all the parties that have been involved. I'd like to thank the Acting Deputy Commissioner. And like all curriculum, there needs to be a constant review of it. I urge the Ministry of Education and FICAC that don't just sit back and say, okay, we've done it. You need to constantly review it. Like all laws and regulations, you need to constantly improve it. Otherwise, when laws and regulations become out of date, technology goes ahead of the law, processes, international practices go ahead of the law, then your law becomes irrelevant. It opens the room for corruption. It's a very basic fact. So everything you must keep up to date. So ladies and gentlemen, government, of course, as you know, has invested a lot of resources in this. The fact that we've got the digitalization program through the ministry, through the Singaporeans in Fiji, will create another greater level of transparency. The fact that very soon we'll be implementing the access to information will also create another level of transparency. And we should not ever be frightened of transparency. We should actually embrace it. Sometimes through your ability to embrace it may actually throw up some things that may be wrong in your organization, but that's fine, because that's been recognized, as long as you have the ability to address it. That's the most important thing. So thank you once again to all those who are very much at the forefront of our combat against corrupt practices. I'd like to thank all of you for your diligence and your energy and your perseverance. And we'd like to, of course, thank the Acting Deputy Commissioner and all those who have been involved in this. And let's, as I think the lady at the back standing there, she said, let's continue to make our country great. Good luck. Thank you.